Welcome to the Ag Inspo podcast, where we delve into the dynamic world of agriculture, uncovering the stories that inspire, empower, and drive change. Join hosts Rena Striegel and Ron Rabo as they explore the journeys of farmers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who are making a difference as they navigate the critical work of transitioning their operation to the next generation. From navigating family dynamics to developing the next generation of ag leaders, we'll bring you the insights and inspiration you need to thrive in today's ever-evolving agricultural landscape. So whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just starting out, get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we learn from best practices and a few colossal failures on the Ag Inspo podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another what's going to be an awesome episode of Ag Inspo. And I am here with my fabulous co-host, Rena Striegel, sitting in the lovely city of Des Moines, Iowa. I am here in southeastern Wyoming, as I usually am, and we have a great episode coming up. This is something that I think is new to the ag space and hopefully new to a lot of our listeners today, Rena. This is some new and exciting technologies in the energy industry.
So, yeah, I'm excited to find out what's going on. So
yeah, these guys are fairly local to me. They're down in Colorado and doing some amazing things. We have Colin Bell and Reza Nazimi with us, and from NitroCat Energies. But before we get going with them, how's the summer been going? Like, are we off to a good start this year?
Very good start. Very good start. Yep. It's we got some rain last night, which is always really exciting this time of year because you hate to see your yard get burned up before the 4th of July, as it does sometimes. And so everything right now, at least in Iowa, is gorgeous, and the crops really appreciated the heat we had over the last week or so. So everything looks good, and shockingly is very tall. I am surprised to see how much the corn grew over the last 5 days or so.
Well, one of my favorite things to do this time of year, and I don't know if you're this way or not, but I love leaving the bedroom window open and just like smelling the cool night air. Because we're higher elevation, it always gets cool here at night and sometimes cold. And just being able to have that kind of come in the window, and it just makes me sleep really well, and I really like it, and I like the smells of summer. So it's an exciting time of year for me. So and everything is greening up, even here in Wyoming. So we're pretty excited about that. The joke is that Wyoming has our state colors are brown and gold for a reason, but right now they should be green. So how great is that?
Well, and everybody ought to enjoy that, because probably next week on our episode, you'll be telling us that everything's dry and dead and you need rain. So everybody should enjoy this one moment in time when Ron's got a positive report for us.
That's right. All right. Well, guys, speaking of green, that is Colorado's favorite color, I think. It's certainly a beautiful, beautiful state. And thanks for joining us today. And I think we really want to kick off. I would like a little bit of background about who you guys are, how you came to play in the roles that you're in right now, and who and what NitroCat Energies is.
Yep, wonderful. I'll tell you, I'll just get us started. Reza and I are both based in Fort Collins, Colorado, and hooked in, and we have some type of tie as research scientists or academic professors to Colorado State University. And Colorado State University's colors are gold and green, and for a reason, because maybe it's just a little greener than our neighbors to the north, like yourself. And we have, for the weather report, been receiving copious amounts of rain in this particular area. I'm sure you're receiving some of it up north there, Ron. I heard a fun fact that Fort Collins in particular has received more rain year to date than Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, Washington.
Wow.
And that's a pretty fun one, because I'll tell you, I was like, wow, but good for us.
It's been a big deal. I mean, I literally would have never imagined that, because you guys were in a drought down there too, just like we were. I mean, it was horrifically dry, like since last summer. And then we've just gotten these tremendous, tremendous rainstorms, unlike anything that I've ever seen before. And so I can't let this go any further. Since you mentioned CSU, you know that the University of Wyoming's biggest rival, we have this game every year called the Border War, because Fort Collins is right over the border from Laramie, where the University of Wyoming is. So the University of Wyoming Cowboys and the CSU Rams have quite a rivalry going on. They battle for the boot every year with the border war, and so I think one of Wyoming's favorite sayings, if I might say it, and Colin, you've heard this 1,000 times, it sucks to be a CSU Ram. And so that is the chant that the University of Wyoming always gives when it doesn't matter when we play CSU. But Fort Collins is an amazing place. If you've never been there, it truly is, I think, one of the best locations and best cities in the United States. And those of us from Wyoming, I think a lot of times are maybe just a little bit jealous of Fort Collins because it sits at the base of the Rocky Mountains. The weather is literally, you can come from Wyoming, especially on I-25, and as soon as you hit the Colorado border, whoever drew the border knew exactly what they were doing because the weather completely changes down there. It's an amazing place. CSU is a tremendous, tremendous college and university and is doing some really great things down there. So it's pretty exciting that you guys have NitroCat going on down there at CSU, just really literally an hour and 20 minutes from me.
That's right. And, we feel so fortunate to be here in Fort Collins. It is a lovely place to live. And it is where NitroCat Energies was born. And not only am I fortunate enough to have been able to meet the founder of NitroCat Energies, Reza, here in this town when we work very closely together, and we're very excited about building out this company, but also where NitroCat Energies technology was founded in Reza's lab as a professor at Colorado State University. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to let Reza actually introduce, as the founder of NitroCat Energies, how it all started and a little bit about the technology. And I'm happy to give a background of myself afterwards.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks everyone for having us today. That's exciting. I'm an assistant professor at Colorado State University. My lab is based at the Powerhouse Energy campus. This campus is energy facilities in the United States that is attached to the university. So we're proud to have this institute, has a legacy of more than 35 years. And previously was abandoned municipality. So it's exciting that now we transform this into the state-of-the-art energy research that contributes to decarbonization and sustainability. So I started my lab 3 years ago, worked on renewable-based technologies to generate fuels and chemicals. And of course, my background was in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech. And we had a couple of IPs on generating sustainable and clean ammonia synthesis. And part of my postdoc at Yale was also on recovering resources from wastewater. So when I started, I thought it's cool to just try to commercialize the technology and bring some of the IPs that I had previously into the market and try to explore the market potential of these technologies, especially on clean ammonia synthesis, which has, we think this is a multifaceted challenge and opportunity. So we can attack or penetrate into multiple markets in transportation, in the energy, in the fertilizer, in the energy storage. So it's a very interesting molecule to work with. And the current process, unfortunately, as we're dealing with all other chemicals, with a wide variety of chemicals we use in our modern life, it's based on fossil fuels. So how we can think about a new process that can potentially disrupt this, unfortunately, carbon intensive process into more clean, sustainable, decentralized that we can provide to our customers. That was the main sort of initiative that we thought we should take to commercialize and think about the market entry in different for different customers and different sectors.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I first met Reza, as an inventor myself, I'll give 2 minutes, and I don't want to harp too much, but I'm I think officially a jack of all trades. I grew up in West Texas, and I tried a little bit of everything growing up on my life's journey. Ultimately, messed around and got myself a PhD in microbiology because I was just fascinated with soil life and soil health, and I really found a passion I dove into, and academically excelled. Worked with the United States Department of Agriculture, with the Forest Service, ultimately plugged into the Natural Resource Ecology Lab at Colorado State University, was very successful for many years in the research scientist track, but ultimately wanted to do more, started thinking about how to apply my academic training and change and help farmers today. The paradigm is all the papers in our academic training will one day just magically transform from a manuscript into changing the world. And I realized that's not going to happen. That's our job. And so we took on the challenge and did that with that particular technology, built something up, found some pain in the market, developed the technology, patented it, licensed it, started a company of over 60 people. And I stayed with it for almost a decade, exited that. And when I exited, I'm still helping other companies and doing a lot of stuff that interests me and working with people that I want to work with, that I think is intellectually stimulating and makes a huge impact. Plugging back into Colorado State University as an executive and resident, and more recently as the interim CEO for NitroCat. It's about progressing the industry, progressing technology to future-proof farming and to future-proof agriculture in the ways we could do it. And so I met Reza. The opportunity was presented to me to work with NitroCat Energies, fell in love with Reza, fell in love with this technology, which was simply a way to decouple and transform the way we can produce fertilizer to support farming. So it completely decentralizes and decouples the manufacturing process from the typical infrastructure developed in the Midwest, decoupling the Haber-Bosch approach, which is how nitrogen is produced these days, to on-site, on-demand fertilizer production that can be sourced through processing nitrogen from the air or processing nitrogen through wastewater streams where those are available. So farmers, local farmers, family-owned farmers, smaller farmers can take control of that vital input so they can have more confidence in their farms moving forward without having to rely on the supply chain and the uncertainties and the lack of predictability that the market offers with so many uncontrollable variables.
I think this is such an interesting conversation, and I'm gonna just admit right off that I'm probably gonna keep asking you to dummy it down to the girl who barely passed chemistry, okay? But I think that this is such an interesting conversation because Des Moines right now is under water restriction because our filtration system cannot keep up with the amount of nitrates, and so we are under lockdown right now to use as little water as possible because our system is stressed. So I think this is very interesting that you have come up with something that could potentially solve that problem.
That's exactly right. This might be a really fun opportunity to actually, at least hypothetically, talk about an applied approach for NitroCat Energies technology, Reza. You think you could explain how the technology, the electrochemical synthesis reactor, would plug into that to create a solution for that locality?
Right, sure. So one of the problems, in fact, this is one of the IPs that we have filed recently, and that's about if you look at for example, the Gulf of Mexico and all the runoff that we are facing that blue baby syndrome and the eutrophication. It's about the runoff, as you said, the nitrate into the water, and our technology, and it's facing all these, we call this corn belt, including the Iowa, that you're unfortunately facing this problem. So our technology takes that nitrate and turn it into market ready fertilizer. So of course, on the black box, on the science part, we are designing proprietary catalyst materials to enhance or promote the reaction. We design electrochemical reactors, but the goal here is, especially in the United States, we are overusing fertilizers, but crop has a sort of a limited capacity to take that nitrogen. It's about 40%. So the reason that we are facing the type of issues that Rena, you were talking about, is because the plant cannot, the uptake is limited. So you have to release that nitrate or nitrogen in the form of nitrate into the groundwater, surface water, and that causes, and if it goes beyond the regulation, which is 10 milligram per liter, then it causes a lot of issues, including impacting the human health. So our technology, the beauty of our technology is decentralized. So every single farm that you have in Iowa, we can install our system, take that runoff and turn it into market ready fertilizers. And we think this way we can sort of close this nitrogen cycle. So we don't create fertilizers, apply it to the farm for growing crops, and then release it into the environment. We take that sort of waste and turn it back into fertilizer, so you can again apply it to the farm for growing crops. And our technology is sort of also versatile because we can take, it's sort of agnostic on the source of nitrogen. So we're not limited to one nitrogen source. You might growing corn, wheat, cotton, different crops. So you might use different types of fertilizers, and we can take different forms of nitrogen, different in liquid form or in the gaseous form, and turn it into market ready fertilizers that, again, farmers, if you're a corn grower, you can apply ammonia to the farm. And that also decreases sort of the storage costs, the transportation costs, because right now we are heavily reliant on sort of centralized facilities. So most of our farmers, you might have seen these storage tanks that they have to put on the site to store ammonia for a long period of time. We say you can just make ammonia on demand, on site, so you can just make it as much as you need, so you don't have to store. Especially ammonia is the energetic material, so it's toxic, it's explosive, and it causes, and unfortunately, if you store it for long period of time, and also you might have some leakage at the same time that you're risking the explosion of this material.
So what?
Yeah, so
what kind of what size of system? I'm trying to just envision what this would look like if it were sitting on a farm today.
So if you have 1,000 acres farm, corn farm, again, you're in Iowa, you like corn, so think about 1,000 acres corn farm, you have to use about 50 metric tons of ammonia per year annually. And our system, think about sort of a black box, 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter, that can generate about 60 metric tons of ammonia. So if you have 1,000 acres farm, if you can just place at the corner of your facility, that could make enough ammonia for your annual demand. And that's excites us about the technology.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? It's like a 3-foot box.
I'm thinking you're going to have like this factory on your farm now that is processing all of this. Oh my goodness.
Right.
When Colin and I were originally talking, he was talking about these systems you could just put on a farm. And I thought, hold on a second. That like Reza, like you were saying, I mean, normally you're just relying on this centralized location where you have to pay for transportation costs and availability and all of that, but you're taking it more directly and personally to each individual farm. So walk us through that. Like, what does that look like? Okay, so you bring out a box, right? And you have to dummy it down for me too, but you bring out a box onto the farm. Then what happens? How are you creating nitrogen as a result of that?
So as Colin mentioned, there are different nitrogen sources that we can use in our system. We can use, similar to Haber-Bosch, that's the conventional process that we're using right now to generate ammonia, is based on taking hydrogen that is produced from natural gas and taking hydrogen that is produced from air separation unit. The air, as you know, 79% of the air is nitrogen. So we separate nitrogen from the air and then combine that with hydrogen that is produced from natural gas, and then put it in sort of the heater, if you will, go to high pressure, high temperature, convert those two into ammonia. In our system, we also can take nitrogen, the same way that was used traditionally, using air separation unit, and using hydrogen, but this time we don't have to take from natural gas, we don't have to split from water. It's just the proton in the water itself, in situ, through the electrochemical process, we can combine that hydrogen and nitrogen into our electrochemical process to generate ammonia. So what's the driving force for this reaction? In the conventional process, heat, pressure, that's how we can get it, go to high temperature by burning fossil fuels. In our system, we take our energy from renewable electricity, from solar energy, from wind energy. That's the driving force for our reactor. And of course, we have to rely on where do we get? If you're in Colorado, if you're in Wyoming, you get the cheapest wind in the nation, so you should be okay. And that's the exciting part about this technology, that we can look at the sort of the different locations and see whether we have access to um, sufficient and cheap electricity to run these reactors to generate ammonia on site. And of course, you have to have the pump and then the sort of the condenser if you're using liquid fertilizers. If you want liquid ammonia, then in our reactor we can make gaseous ammonia, and then we can condense that, and ammonia is about 8 to 10 bar pressure. You can increase the pressure a little bit so you can have ammonia in the liquid form, and then you can just apply it for crop production. So that's the goal. And we think this is also an exciting opportunity. If you're looking, for example, we have many dairy farms in the state of Colorado that they're right now releasing their waste and storing it into the lagoon, and it's rich in nitrogen. And the way that they're using right now, the land again has very limited capacity to take that nitrogen. So, and nitrogen is volatile, it released to the environment. So that's why you don't walk around those lagoons in dairy farms. But we think our technology would be an exciting opportunity for dairy farmers to take these reactors, install on site, run the wastewater through our reactor, and then take ammonia at the exit of this reactor, and then they can sell it either to, some of them they have they're growing crops on site, some of them they have nearby corn farmer next to the dairy farm, so they can sell it to their neighbors or they can use it on site. And again, this would be an exciting opportunity to think about. You got this ammonia, this is energetic material, you can use it as a fuel. If you want to power your tractor on site, you can do that. If you want to use it for power generation, you can do that as well. Or if you want, just take the safe side and just sell it as a fertilizers and having additional revenue stream for your dairy farm, that would be exciting as well, just because the gross margin for dairy farm is not significantly high. So we think turning their waste into wealth, that's something that they can really take advantage of.
So just a
Rod,
question for the dairy farmers. How does this system work with like a dairy farm that might already have a digester?
Exactly. We participated in the ICOR program, and we thought that's the best scenario for our technology, that we got these dairy farms, they have already digesters. They can make renewable natural gas out of the digesters, but they're not doing anything with the nitrogen contained
Right.
in the water. So our system can be integrated with that digester to also capture that nitrogen as well, to make renewable natural gas, renewable ammonia, and that would be again very compelling for many of dairy farms. Again, we identified many dairy farms in the state of Colorado, but I believe nationally this would be compelling as well.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, because the dairy farm in particular is always trying to, take what the cattle are doing and recover as much out of the waste as they possibly can. So I think we're talking to not only inventors, but we've got some disruptors here as well. It sounds like this is an industry disruptor that we're talking about.
You nailed it on the head. I think that's one of the most exciting things about this. We're transforming, this type of technology is transforming the way that farmers can think about sourcing and or getting the production of, in this particular technology by itself, anhydrous ammonia or urea. But this can also transform to other nutrition at all as well. And so thinking about repurposing waste into reusable, high quality nitrogen for fertility is super exciting. Again, there's so many implications for creating a circular nitrogen cycle, an economy, for decoupling and empowering family-owned farms to become their producers of nitrogen in this particular case. Think about the excess. We could also think about ways that produce ancillary revenue streams for farmers using these particular technologies. And when I came aboard, Reza had a whole target list of where this technology is going, and we're talking global and beyond. But other applications which are super exciting, even beyond fertilizer. We think about fuel. You think about ammonia in particular. It has hydrogen, and hydrogen fuel is best stored as ammonia. And so a black box, NitroCat Energies black box can go on top of any building and actually source and pull the nitrogen gas from the air and start creating ammonia, which can be repurposed for fertilizer, it can be repurposed for fuel. And so thinking about the energy applications and the fertility applications for something this conceptually simple, it's a black box, a source goes in, all the pollutants get removed, it gets repurposed as high quality output that can be used as a commodity in the case of fertilizer or fuel. And then there's a clean output. And so it can be used for municipalities. It can be used for farms, the small stakeholder farm, for larger farms. It can be used for what? Data centers that actually want to power and cool down those data rooms in a more efficient fuel source. So it's kind of limitless, and it's a blue ocean. You talk about disruption. We're talking blue ocean here. It just hasn't been done yet. Yeah. And we believe NitroCat Energies is the future for these solutions.
So Reza, what do you hope? I mean, you are sitting there in your lab and you're thinking about all the places that this could go. You've obviously, got an agricultural focus, it sounds like right now. In terms of the adoption of this on farms, what is your hope that your technology will be able to do? What's the penetration rate you're looking for?
Sure. So as Colin mentioned, this hasn't been done before. So we're touching on the market that is, there is an untapped potential that we see in the dairy farm, and we think that we should leverage and capitalize on sort of the features of this technology and try to help some of these farmers to leverage nitrogen, especially fertilizers, the price of fertilizers for dairy farms and also for crop growers. It's not the commodity that farmers are very comfortable with buying. So it's not a very cheap commodity chemicals, especially if you're growing crops, those like corn, wheat, that is traditionally very popular in the United States. So helping them by lowering the cost, by giving them this comfort that you can really use the nitrogen that you already have on site and make it and transform it into something that you use it for growing these crops that you're doing already. I think this would be a very, in terms of gross margin, we can also look at different markets, but just in terms of sort of the helping farmers and in terms of impact, I think this would be very, very impactful for sort of helping not the wealthiest people in the world to make more crops and to have sort of the uh, peace of mind that you have what you need to grow crops and continue making profit out of your the facility and producing the crops that you were producing before. That's my first hope to, and especially since it's this is disruptive in a way that this can really change the paradigm and the way that we are making our fertilizers. Uh, Based on the current processes that is totally centralized. So farmers have to deal with transportation, storage, the insurance cost, and again, dealing with some toxic, explosive chemical. This would be very compelling to me, and my hope is to penetrate into this market as our first market. But as Colin mentioned, we can further expand to different markets, especially in the energy market. Ammonia has more hydrogen than hydrogen itself, meaning that if you store hydrogen in the form of ammonia and transport it, in terms of energy density, you're better off to store hydrogen in the form of ammonia. And in terms of capital cost, transmission cost, you're just multiple orders of magnitude cheaper if you do it in the form of ammonia. So we can expand our business into other, I'd say, more wealthier market, which is the energy market, and think about how to disrupt the energy market by using the energetic properties of ammonia fuel. Now, instead of fertilizer, we sort of switch and shift the gear to energy and think about how we can really, as a backup power, for example, we don't have to replace all the fossil fuel based technologies that we are using today, but even as a backup power, when we see the market, the amount of electricity we're using today, especially with the emergence of AI and the amount of electricity we need to run these data centers, it's just enormous. And getting a portion of that electricity is enough to make a very, very profitable market and margin for our business.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Colin, I'm going to shift over to you. When you know you've got something that you're sitting on that can go a lot of different directions and create a lot of value in a lot of different industries, how are you internally sort of taking a look at it and saying, okay, where do we go first? Where do we put our limited resources in order to create revenue that's going to power the engine of NitroCat, which, by the way, NitroCat is a super cool name, whoever came up with that. Um, but tell me, how are you sitting in your war room figuring out where do we go and how much time do we spend trying to get there?
Yeah, great questions. And these are really important questions that all very young companies struggle with. And I did the same with my first company. There's endless opportunities, but I'll tell you what, you can be a master of one or a master of none. And the idea, I have two words for that. And Reza knows, he's laughing because he knows them. Two words: laser focus.
Yeah.
You have to go a direction. You have to go with something that you believe in. And it's about getting traction and learning about who you are, who you should be, and who you want to be through the engagement of getting into a market. So when I met NitroCat and heard the vision, I immediately, and as an entrepreneur and innovator, I got super excited by the message without knowing anything. I mean, I'm a microbiologist, a nature guy, an ecologist, and I'm having to learn about mechanical engineering and electrochemical synthesis reactors. And I remember typing some stuff up. I'm like, the world leads you on some funny journeys. I never thought that I was going to have to know about mechanical engineering and electrochemical synthesis reactors, but you have to. And the world will actually present you a door. You can walk through that door or not. And I'm really glad I walked through this door with Reza and his group, because it's about agriculture. I'm the agriculture guy. I'm not the Google guy. I'm not the energy guy. I've always focused on soil, boots on the ground, working to understand how to help farming grow. Every one of my academic endeavors and publications and all my professional endeavors was all focused around agriculture. So I told the group, if you're focused on data centers, I might not be your guy. But if you want to focus on livelihood of figuring out how to engage farming and bring value to farming, I am your guy, because I see the pathway for this technology. And listen, 10 farms leads to 100 farms leads to 1,000 farms. And it's not about profitability at a very early stage of a company or a technology. It's about getting validation, getting traction, and progressing the technology forward. So Reza and I work really cohesively as a team. And it's also about, capitalizing the organization too. So we were working diligently towards getting grants and getting funding in to scale the technology to that next level and attaining those goals. We're laser focused. When I first joined the group, there was an agenda, maybe 100 items. That's an exaggeration. I said, team, we need to focus on one thing. And we identified that one thing. And I said, that's the only thing I want to talk about. And so every meeting, we have weekly meetings, we're talking about one thing, and we're figuring out how to understand what we don't understand about achieving that one particular thing. And I'll tell you, my success in all companies was achieved with focus. And when there was a distraction or that lack of focus, that's when companies start to dilute and dissolve. And I've seen it happen 100 times. And NitroCat at this young stage can't afford not to focus. And so we're aligned, we're focused, and our value is making farming and farmers successful, making them self-reliant with this particular input, and figuring out how to align NitroCat Energies technology on the farm. And, Rez and I work all the time together with grants, in particular, non-dilutive funding, and we're working with some dilutive funding sources to capitalize the business. But regardless, I think the 2-year vision for NitroCat is 100 farms. And that's really a great goal for the technology, to get this validated, to get it done 100 farms. And I promise you, and I've told Reza this 100 times, on 10 farms, we're going to learn a lot about ourselves. You can't pontificate and hypothesize everything, but as smart as we are, we're both hands-on learners. He's a mechanical engineer. I'm a soil scientist. So if I'm not digging in the soil, forget about it. I'm not going to be talking about soil if I haven't been in it a bunch. And getting on the farm and understanding what we thought was exactly the reality, and adjusting that, because we're good enough, as we know, managing reality is not the problem for most people. It's about identifying what that reality is so we know how to manage that. And so it's our job to define reality as it exists, and we can address it. We're very capable in that way. So one foot in front of the other, one step at a time, being very methodical about making progress. And I've honestly, officially only joined the team in February, and we've made enormous progress on focus and just that unilateral movement of vision. They say companies are pretty simple. They're a bunch of people under a single roof working towards a direction. Great companies are a group of people working under a single roof, working towards the same direction. And I've worked under many organizations that were a group of people that are looking very different directions, and it can become very bipolar if you have companies that are going opposite directions under the same roof. So NitroCat is going the same direction with that same vision, and that's how you progress. That's the definition of it. So again, laser focus.
Yeah.
So
Reza, I'd like to. Oh, sorry, Garan, go ahead.
No, I'm curious now, guys. So obviously, and Colin, you and I have talked about this before, that you're in the very infant stages of launching this. So how close are you to finding some farms and installing the technology? You know the technology works. How close are you to that stage, and what will that process look like? Um, and how do you identify who those farms are, where those farms are located? How do you measure that success? Like, what are your stages now from, okay, you're where you're at now, you have the technology. How do you start installing it? How do you start using it? And how can potential farms even take advantage of that at this point?
I'll start this, Reza, then I'm not hand this off to you, but I'll tell you what what you do is you start local. We have no shortage of people that or farms that are very interested in this technology, addressing some early hypothesis or kind of this loose educated guesses of, hey, this is a good fit. We know what the technology does, how effective it is, and so one of the processes, and Reza alluded to this too, is called an I-Core program, which is the Innovation Core program for the National Science Foundation, among others. And I went through this as a young entrepreneur also. And the idea is getting scientists out of the building to pitch their great ideas to the real world. And so you connect what you think your technology is, and it's been referred to as a value proposition. What is this thing that's so great that's going to change the world? And make sure that other people besides you think it's equally great and equally great enough that it's going to solve pain and someone's ultimately going to give you money, calling a customer segment. I went through that exercise over a decade ago where I had something that I thought was the best thing ever. And I'm in my lab working on it. And the I-Core program got me out and it said, okay, go talk to 100 farmers and see how they think about it. And that's how you form a business, through data driven, the scientific process of market discovery. NitroCat Energies has done the same thing. And so what you do is engage and you learn what customers actually want, what farmers actually want. Does it solve the pain point? And you can relate it back to your technology. In a perfect world, you know what the pain is and you're solving that in consecutive in a product development cycle. Younger technologies and younger startups typically fall into the trap, the founder's trap or the entrepreneurial trap of creating the best solution in the world that nobody wants. And you can go a long way down a pathway before you realize that. The National Science Foundation realized that was a trap and a real stifle for the energy and efforts of scientists, especially in academia. So they backed up the process to make sure you could validate that early on, because that can be a painful, long journey for entrepreneurs before they understand how to adjust their thinking and their technologies to get that fit. So Reza and his team have dairy farms local, and there's some local farms in Fort Collins, Colorado that want the technology. Reza has worked with some industry partners to already develop solutions in his lab. NitroCat has a prototype that has validated the effectiveness of the throughput and the efficiency of taking wastewater and producing it in the anhydrous ammonia. Where NitroCat Technologies is right now in its life cycle of technology development is scaling and getting that first life-size prototype to get in the field. And that's something that's where we're addressing capital resources. It's not necessarily a cheap endeavor, although these are really efficient units to get that scale up. And so we're currently working towards the very goal of maximizing our ability to scale up the first units to deploy in the field. And we would call those pilot units. And so those pilot units will allow us to work for a year with those select farming groups, especially the dairy farmers in this area, to learn what we think we know and to learn what we don't know about how well this technology will fit into different scenarios. And one of the things also, I think a really interesting challenge that NitroCat has taken head on from the get-go is, if you can imagine processing wastewater, sludge, especially from a dairy farm, is a very different technology proposition than transforming nitrogen from air. If you can imagine, with the organics and just the material passing through a physical reactor or a box. So what NitroCat Energies believes is solving the wastewater problem for dairy farms allows us to learn an enormous amount about our technology, how great it is, and where we would need to adjust. And reasonably so, we can't hypothesize everything, especially over time in different elemental conditions, in different types of service conditions. So we can have a robust solution to take to these other environments, to understand and set expectations on a potential service or a potential life cycle for and efficiencies, quite honestly, which is another interesting detail. The throughput efficiency for a municipal wastewater stream or a dairy farm or air would be different. And we need a little bit of field time to work through those so we know exactly what the output is over time, because that's the value at the end of the day. Is, this is a manufacturing box that produces a commodity, and we need to have that a little more predictable.
Reza, I'd love to come back to you for just a second, because I find it super interesting to listen to this journey. I would love to hear from you, like, what was the aha moment where you were, inside all of your studies and your papers and your, just all the things that you were doing, all of a sudden you had this aha moment that said, we could do this.
Sure. And I think that I-Core program was sort of very impactful for us to sort of open our eyes about the extra impact of our technology, just because we started local, as Colin mentioned, reached out to local dairy farms, and we're not in short of dairy farmers in the state of Colorado. Just in the two counties, the Larimer County and next to us, the Weld County, I think we have up to 100 dairy farm, anywhere from 1,000 cows to 6,000 cows, and we have a letter of support. They've expressed their interest in adopting this technology on site. And we thought, so initially our technology was based on capturing nitrogen, converting it into fertilizers. But then we talked to these dairy farms and we realized that for each cow today, they spend $300 for washing the cow and using the water to in the dairy farm, washing the barn. And our technology obviously uses the liquid waste, right, from the manure lagoons, and run it through our reactor. And of course generates ammonia, which you can easily separate from the liquid waste. But what do you do with that water? It's basically, you can sort of treat that water to the level that we think dairy farms, they can again use for washing cows, for washing the barn. And we thought, on top of the margin that they already have for selling, for example, ammonia, commodity chemical, whatever they want to use for, they can also reuse that water. So if we can save about 10 to 20% of that $300 per cow, this would be enormous for dairy farm. Think about this, a farm with 5,000 cows, that how much it can impact. And in fact, for dairy farms, the aha moment that you said, for them, ammonia might not be necessarily the priority. But if you say that we have a technology that can treat your water so you can reuse, you mentioned about water stressed states in the United States, especially in the western states. We are in the 12-year drought. So if you can come up with a technology that can sort of double deep, making chemicals, but also treat that water so you can reuse and reclaim, that would be very impactful for dairy farm and of course crop growers as well. So we thought by treating this technology, and we have some ideas how to treat that water so that dairy farm we can probably not bringing into the level that we can use for drinking, but definitely to the some level that we can again reuse for removing viruses, bacteria, all the organics, so that we can again reuse that water in the dairy farm. And that's the value prop. We didn't think about this initially, but now we are very keenly interested in developing these systems so that we can have both water and chemical or ammonia.
I think that is amazing because I work with a lot of dairies myself. So, and I'm from a dairy farm. I grew up on one. So there's a lot of water that gets used because there's also a lot of poop that you have to be managing all the time. So I think that is amazing where you can think about a system where you are already funneling everything through to a digester. And then you've got this technology that is going to pick a few of those things off and send it back to the system. I'm assuming before it goes into the digester, or is it kind of yeah, I guess that would be how it would have to be. It would have to be a pre-digester system.
That's what we think that would be the case. You
Yeah.
sort of integrate. I don't think necessarily. I think it's better to put it before the digester so that you can capture. Um,
Right.
but it doesn't hurt even because the digester doesn't do necessarily. It doesn't impact the nitrogen concentration. But I think it's better to just place it before the digester.
Yeah.
They have sort of independent roles, the digester
Right.
and our reactor.
Right. Kind of needs the same input, but you're getting very different output.
Output, exactly.
Okay, that is amazing. So when you're thinking about I mean, obviously you're already starting to identify some of the savings, right? We can recycle water, we can recapture, some of the nitrates.
Nitrogen.
Yes, but when you think about this have you figured out, like, if we're talking about dairy, what the cost per cow is for having the system on farm, or the cost per acre if you were raising corn?
So this is again, this is sort of multifaceted. So we're
Sure.
thinking about uh, we thought about the sort of the margin and how much you have to pay sort of for the reactor and how much saving you have. And initially for your customers, you got to think about the return on investment. What would be the
100%. Yes.
timeline for return on investment? And that's why we sort of backed off from our original plan to sell this reactor uh, versus leasing these reactors to our customers. And this would be sort of compelling. And this would be, in a long run, it would be actually beneficial because we thought we can sell these reactors. So the cost of the reactor to make one of these reactors, um, and if you want to include the solar panels and the energy, that's different. But the actual black box is about 25 to 30K. That's the cost for us to make. And we thought we can have 50% margin, sell it to these customers for 50K. Of course, based off of discovery and customer discovery, we realize probably farmers uh, are not willing to pay 50K upfront. But we said, how about leasing this 2K monthly? And they said yes. But if you look at this, I mean, as in the long run, if for us would be awesome because you can just get 2K monthly, and in like 2 3
Absolutely.
years you can get the reactor and keep going for 10 20 years, which is the life of the electrolyzer or the black box that we're selling. uh,
Mm.
on top of that would be the maintenance cost. That would be an additional revenue stream for
Yep.
us. So the return on investment in a best case scenario would be ideally less than 2 years if you incorporate the water recovery side.
Yeah.
If you just incorporate the chemical side, probably would be longer. But what's exciting about this technology is you can lease it to farmers, 2K per month. They can generate, again, about 50 to 60 metric tons of ammonia. And this is based on one of the dairy farm we have in close proximity, about 10 miles from our campus. And they can recover and this is a farm with 50,000 gallons of wastewater daily. So we did this calculation about how much water they can claim as a result of adopting this technology, how much chemical they can produce from this technology, and the revenue would be by doing this would be really an exciting opportunity for this dairy farm. And in case if you're interested to buy these, pay upfront, you're welcome to do so. If you want to lease this, that's also another possibility. But it seems that in both cases, there are very interesting incentives for us to just make sure this is a profitable business for NitroCat Energies. For our customers, this would be also a good basically investment, and with very compelling return on investment of less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's great that you're
Big
talking
deal.
about the maintenance, because I don't know a lot of people that would say, "Yeah, let me go out and wrench on a reactor." That might be a little intimidating for the average diesel mechanic. So
I'm sure
so I think
Colin
that
would be very happy to join that. You'd probably be all
Yeah.
about going and fixing those, right?
Hey, listen, all day. I'll just drive my NitroCat service truck around and get you right fixed up.
That's right. No, I think that's amazing, and it's really lovely that you're already starting to figure out, what the throughput these black boxes can handle, what they will immediately start to kick off in terms of a return. I find that just incredibly fascinating, and for any farmer that is dealing with large fertilizer purchases, being able to recapture its own fertilizer and not have to spend that again the next year. Particularly as you're saying, it sounds like it's an on-demand system, so you don't have to produce it and store it. You can produce it right as you're needing it, if I'm hearing you correctly.
That's exactly the motivation, which
Wow.
basically disrupts the market, that you don't have to store. You can just make it as much as you need. Like, I need 5 metric tons for this season. Sure, that's how you can make. So you don't have to pay or purchase 50 metric tons and then you have to store it and use it um, throughout the year. So that's something that makes this technology very unique.
So if a
Interestingly,
farm was using 50 metric tons, how long does that take to produce?
So they just, oh, you're talking about this, our
Yeah, for the
technology.
reactor, like how long does it take to take everything in and produce an actual net 50 metric tons?
So it depends on how long you're running it. So we thought, again, I mentioned one of the dairy farm near our campus, 50,000 gallons of wastewater throughout the year. They're making this daily. So we said, if you're running this reactor 8 hours per day, um, it's just very quick on and off. So you don't have to steadily run this 24/7 to make that. Uh, Based off of that, 8 to 10 hours, of course, if you want to run it for 20 hours, but that also depends on how much power you got. We're relying on, again, solar energy. We think 8 hours is a reasonable estimate to say that we get energy from sun. Um, and if you, based on the input that you run these 50,000 gallons for 8 hours daily, then you're able to make 50 metric tons of ammonia annually. And of course, you don't, if you need 10 metric tons, then you just calculate that. Okay, I produced 50,000 gallons today, or this week it was about 300,000 gallons of wastewater. Let's run it through the reactor so we can get, for example, 5 metric tons of ammonia this week. So you just have to manage based on how much you need. But if you run it, answer your question, for 50 metric tons, you got 50,000 gallons of wastewater daily. Run it through the reactor 8 hours, and if you do that daily, every single day, you get to that 50 metric tons annually.
Mhm.
And if you want to go higher than that, you can. If you have enough input, you can just increase the amount of hours by having additional, for example, electricity sources. Or you might say that, no, I don't need 50 metric tons. I need 30 metric tons. You just lower the input to get lower output.
that's a really interesting question too, Ron, because that's some of the things we're proposing in this next iteration. for funding for the fundamental research to scale this. Those are really important details: the throughput, the time, the cost, the use. And it's a pretty simple equation, although some technical details are still in the works. And that's, the number of reactors, the time, the output, the intention. Is it on demand for the farm, or is it a revenue stream where you actually want to start creating ancillary revenue source, not only displacing your cost of fertilizer on the farm, but to sell to the neighboring farms and to create that revenue stream as well. So there's so many details that are kind of dependent on the location, and that's where NitroCat Energies is now plugging into some pretty well known locations, validating that throughput, and then kind of permutating the different scenarios to get this on demand necessity for the different farm the different farm requirements.
I feel like this could very well be one of those runaway trains of a company where you're sitting there collecting data and you've got your thing and you've got people who have said that they want it. So you're doing your testing. And then all of a sudden, everyone is coming knocking saying, if it's only an entry point of $2,000 a month to get into this, how fast can we get it? So what has your thinking been about that, the runaway train company? Because that could be a tough thing when it starts to go really, really fast.
It's the worst thing for an entrepreneur or a young business owner, a founder, is opportunity lost. And so you want to mitigate those expectations clearly. And it's really hard to overpromise and underdeliver in any of these things. And so we're at a young stage, and we want to be ready for that. Obviously, there's a pretty simple equation for scaling up, and it's understanding what you're scaling and the capital to scale it. So that's not the hardest problem to solve. We want to make sure we're ready to scale. And so we're in the learning through the rest of the year, probably learning into 2026, understanding exactly what that number is and going and selling it. One of the things I do pretty well too, and I've done this in the past, is I love selling technology and going out and engaging and getting that there. So I'm not really worried about scaling to there. It can be very painful, but we want to make sure that we are very mindful and conscious about the cadence that we're marketing the technology and developing it. We're at the right place, that we deliver the highest quality product with the most confidence to the market. That's important for us to do.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So if people are interested in this, because the audience that listens to this is, dairy farmers, large crop, row crop operations, hogs, and they're sitting there going, well, wait a minute, this is great. Like we don't want to wait. We want to get hooked into this, at least get on some kind of a wait list or become part of the conversation. How would they do that?
They'd reach out to us. The website will present this at nitrocatenergies.com. Colin, Colin at nitrocatenergies.com. You can reach out via email. Reza as well. We would love to talk to you. I'd like to come visit with you. Our team is here to learn and grow with you. And we appreciate your support, Ron. That's how you and I met, as we got a call for a mutual acquaintance. And all of a sudden, that's one of those things. It's like, what was the last couple of the statements at the end of the call? When can I get it? This sounds too good to be true type of stuff. And that's it. So it's like, hey, Ron, yes, you're going to be the first to know. We have a couple of steps to really get this going. But it's on the precipice of being everywhere. And I think it is the future. We know the Haber-Bosch manufacturing plants, which are huge and very energy expensive, are all through the Midwest of the country, because that's where the energy is at the least expensive. And you have to transport those productions when you go east or west from the Corn Belt. And we want to make sure that we can place NitroCat Energies black box technology across the country, where we just completely disrupt the supply chain and logistics required for fertility for nitrogen fertility for farming.
That's amazing, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this. Like my brain, because I tend to be a little bit visionary about where things can go, and
Yeah.
I am it is so easy to catch what you are trying to do. It is so easy to visualize what you're going to be able to do with this. I cannot tell you, at least from my perspective, how exciting this is, and to, tell the farms that I'm working with to get online and get connected to you, because we do tend to have some pretty innovative farms that are always looking for this type of thing. And it is very exciting to hear not only the science behind it, because Reza, I mean, you like that first 5 minutes that you laid out about this, I was like, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to be on this podcast with him right now. But being able to convert all of that science that is behind this into just a layman's usage about, here is what it is. It is a small black box. It does this. It produces this ROI. And this is the byproduct of having this on your farm. I think that is incredibly compelling. Incredibly compelling.
Thank
So,
you.
But it's
I
so
mean,
multifaceted. I
all
think
of it.
whenever you have something that can capitalize on waste, essentially, and have a return on the investment, and the farmer can more vertically integrate what he's actually trying to do, it's just a win for everyone, because agriculture is changing so much, and it's changing so fast that it's one of the challenges that all of us who are in production agriculture face, right? Like we're facing increasing costs all the time with what seem to be stagnated markets. And so how do we get better at utilizing the things that are already at our fingertips? And I think you guys are playing right into that. And it can only help, and it can only benefit American farmers. So
Likewise.
kudos to you guys, and I'm very excited. We will make it an absolute point to make sure that we follow up here in a year or so to see where things have gone and what the progress has been, and see, what other things you've uncovered in the process.
Thank you, Ron. I really appreciate that. I'll tell you, if NitroCat wants to be known for one thing, and I'll give you one word, it's predictability. We want to offer predictability for farming, and it's such a big deal. And to represent that is just an honor. And Rena, I'll tell you, the first dozen calls I was on with Reza and his team, and I have a scientific background, I didn't think I was smart enough to be on the call either, to be quite honest with you. And so, I'm in the background. I do my part. Reza's genius behind the electrochemical synthesis reaction and the vision is just an honor to be a part of. It gives me goosebumps. It's important. It's important, and it's way bigger than any of us here. And so it's a really fun endeavor, and we're looking forward to the future. And we're looking forward to the future of farming with NitroCat Energies.
I have no doubt that it is going to look very different with you in the picture. I have no doubt. This is like I said, I love game changers, but this is a disruptor, and those are even more exciting. So I can't wait to see what you do to the market. I can't wait for people to squirm. It's going to be super fun.
Yeah.
We love it. So if you were, as we kind of wrap up today, although I'm super fascinated and I still have about 100 more questions, so we are going to have a follow-up call. But I would love for you to share, as we're wrapping up today, you're both inventors, you're both entrepreneurs, you are taking exciting new things to the market. What is one or two things that you've learned that you would share with people that are sitting on an idea and are not quite sure what to do with it? What would you, either something you learned that was an aha for you, or just one of those key things that you would double down on every day?
Colin, do you want to go first?
I'll start. This is easy for me. Engage with people. The wisdom and the answers don't always happen inside this noggin of mine, but they always are revealed by engaging with others. And that can be a scary thing, to share your thoughts, to engage, to ask for people's perspectives and opinions. And it's not always the easiest thing for groups of people. But I'll tell you, if you can do that, you're going to be able to calibrate your perspective of reality with reality of a larger sample size, not to be too scientific about that. And that has always, always, always served me well. And I think it will serve young businesses well. And likewise, I think the pitfall of young businesses, more than not, is identifying the answer and the solution to world's problems without asking the world if it's a problem. And so that's the number one most simple thing any young entrepreneurs and young startup companies could do.
I'm going to ask you just to go one step further with that, Colin, because like anybody could watch this, or even as you're listening, you can tell that you are a high drive, high energy. I'm suspecting probably extremely extroverted. So people are kind of your bag to begin with. So if you are maybe, and I'm going to look over here at Reza, who's maybe a little bit more thoughtful, maybe a little more introverted, more of a thinker than a talker, what would your advice be, to someone who is shuddering in their very introverted skin when you say go talk to people? How do those people overcome maybe that reluctance to engage, to get out there and engage?
I'll tell you, those people are not going to like my answer, for the record. So you people out there,
I'm going to watch Reza's face as you answer this. I'm watching you, Reza.
It's very hard to think your way out of some of those precarious situations and internal strifes. And sometimes you just got to do your way out of them, which means engage. You have to take action. Action is the solution of many of our challenges as humans in general. It's the same speech I give my son on a regular basis as I would give any of my professional mentees, as my mentors have gave me. Go do it. We only have one life here. Let's swing for the fences. And you can be paralyzed by analysis, paralysis by analysis, or you can fearlessly engage the world. And I'll tell you one thing, any company I work with, my past companies in NitroCat Energies, we don't make decisions based on fear. And that decision includes the decision or choice to go act. We go do it. We might not like the answers that we get, but we're going to fearlessly face those answers too, because we're looking for reality and we're trying to engage with reality. And so it's a non-negotiable activity that you're not going to want to do, but we're going to allow you to do this. It's not easy, but it can be simple. And so create a very simple structure of just doing, and you'll get over it because it gets easier. And all of a sudden, you're going to look at the world from a different light, and it's going to be rewarding and enlightening.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Reza, how about you? What would be your top tip to people who are sitting on an idea, thinking they could really be a game changer, but they don't know what to do next?
Sure. I think as a scientist, we often just focus on the sort of a very sciencey and very cool technologies that we really can't find a solution for it. So, and this business really allowed me to also be able to talk to my students. They come and this is a very exciting idea to focus on. And I say, what's the application? And they just struggle to elaborate on the application of the technology. So I think it's, and sometimes we joke between our colleagues and other faculty that you don't create the technology and then try to find a solution. You go and talk to people, understand their pain points, and then come to the lab and try to develop the technology that can address that pain point that your customers and people that eventually will be adopting your technology are facing right now, and that technology could potentially address their pain points. And be open-minded and agnostic. And I guess the I-Core program was the great example of that. I had some mind. I thought that this is the direction I want to go, and now I see that if you're open, if you hear them well, you can sort of even make your technology more compelling. So you don't have to pivot totally, but by hearing them well, by understanding their pain points better, you really can develop more impactful technologies that can address their pain points in a much better, cohesive way than you originally envisioned. And I think that's for all entrepreneurs out there and inventors, I think be open-minded and agnostic when you talk to your customers is sort of the lesson learned, at least for me.
Yeah. Sounds like suppression of the ego is an important key factor. To not think that you've made it and they need to buy it the way you've made it, but to really figure out how it should be adapted to have its greatest use or its biggest life as an idea.
Especially
Well,
for scientists with PhD, this should be practiced very well. So the ego side.
You introduced me to a new word, and that is science-y.
I know. I love that word. I'm using it. Science-y. I
Totally
love it,
great.
Reza. Well, you guys, like I said, I could not be more excited to hear and learn about what you're doing. I'm excited about the two of you just as human beings that are really looking at the problems that are absolutely real problems and impacting not just agriculture, but, all the way down to the people in the city that are, limiting and being fearful about drinking water because they're being told it's going to give them cancer and it's going to have horrible impact on their babies. So I just applaud you wholeheartedly for what you're doing, and I can't wait for our catch-up conversation to find out where you are in 2 years. And Ron, I'm going to be really jealous on the day that you send me a picture of the black box. I'm going to be really jealous. I'm going to be headed to your place to see it.
You know it's going to happen. And guys, I just echo everything that Rena said, that way to go and way to innovate and create and change and be willing to step beyond the things that you think you understand, and way to put Colorado State University on the map. I mean, it's all compliments to you, and we're super excited to see where this goes. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making a positive impact in the life of those of us who are involved in production agriculture. And this can be a real, true game changer for all of us who are involved there. So thank you for making a difference. And we will look forward to the next conversation that we have with both of you and the wonderful and awesome things that you've done from now until then, and will continue to do into the future. So thanks for joining us today on the Ag Inspo podcast, and we look forward to next time. Join us again.
You've been listening to the Ag Inspo podcast with Ron Rabo and Rena Striegel. Find Ag Inspo on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. For more information about today's guest or the resources referenced today, please see the show notes listed below. Join us next time when we will meet another inspirational leader who has taken those small steps to bring about really big change.